Hi, Scorpio. Let's talk about the astrology of December 2025 and January 2026 and what it signifies for you. There's a lot going on with this chart, but let's start by talking about the Gemini full moon that occurs on December 4th. This full moon is ruled by Mercury, which is newly direct in Scorpio at this time. Mercury was retrograde in November, and it will spend December going direct through Scorpio and then Sagittarius. And not only that, Mercury is also forming a grand water trine here with Jupiter and Saturn. I want to talk about all of this, but let's just start with this full moon in Gemini. This full moon is falling in your 8th house, Scorpio, which relates to some pretty deep themes. The 8th house can be about transformation and wisdom, and also some practical things can show up here too. I refer to it as others' money because it's funds that you receive from places other than your own earnings. So the most common thing is a spouse's income, but inheritance or investment, things like that can show up here too. There's a kind of a quick intelligence with this signature. We might not have all the answers at this time, but we might kind of feel like we do anyway, Scorpio. Gemini is smart and quick intellectually. This is a great time for learning new things or communicating new ideas. You're a little extra mentally flexible right now and feeling ready to learn something new. Just be a little careful not to speak or move too quickly. Sometimes Gemini full moon energy is so interested in going fast that it can sort of miss a thing or two. Even though this full moon is falling in such an introspective house, a full moon in Gemini is still a great time for having fun and being social. And I think that's a little extra true with Mercury direct here through your first house, which we'll talk about next. But Gemini signatures are all about keeping things fun, light, and enjoyable. This Gemini full moon is an amazing time to gather with friends for some laughs. Or it could be a really nice time to get together with just one other person for a good long talk. We generally don't love to be super serious in the Gemini part of our chart, but we do like to enjoy ourselves, to connect with others and have a little fun. So bringing a bit of that to whatever inner work you're doing right now, Scorpio, could be really helpful. Still, there's also a kind of a restlessness to this full moon. Gemini energy is kind of restless. So this full moon could correspond with sort of a jittery feeling, like there's too much to say, too much to do, too much to think about. Variety is a good thing at this time. It really satiates Gemini full moon energy. But it also might be interesting to notice the thoughts, ideas, conversations that keep you feeling energized versus the ones that sort of keep you spinning. Paring down, Scorpio, and directing your focus a little towards the things that bring you peace and away from the rest of the noise could be really helpful at this time. You're grappling with multiple perspectives now. Gemini is the sign of the twins, and the full moon here tends to highlight two sides or more of a story. You might notice that both versions of an experience hold truth in their own way. At the end of the day, though, this is a time to be curious rather than certain. It's okay if you don't feel like you have all the answers just yet. Now is a time for learning and gaining the benefit of seeing a situation from multiple angles. Let's talk about the planet that's ruling this lunation, Mercury. On November 29th, Mercury goes direct after a 3.5-week retrograde. Mercury will move direct through Scorpio until December 11th when it enters Sag, and it will move direct through Sagittarius until January 1st. So we really have two different parts of the chart in play here. We're talking about your first house. The first house relates to your identity, sort of your intuitive expression in the world. Your appearance can show up here and just themes around your relationship with yourself. And then the second house, which is ruled by Sagittarius for you, is related to earnings and values. The money that you make here at work can show up in the second, and also other things that you value. We all appreciate the value of money. We use it to pay the rent, buy food, but other things that are valuable to you show up in the second too, like time to yourself, time with family, time for spiritual practices. I often find myself mentioning time when I'm talking about the second house values side. I think because it's such a fine and precious resource, we do tend to see themes around time and other things that really are valuable to you show up in the second. But this is a financial house, largely, and it often relates to your earnings, the money that you're making at work. There's a process of discovery and clarity unfolding here over the course of the month of December, Scorpio. Last month's retrograde through these two signs had us digging deep, covering what was hidden, confronting new information and old memories, and re-examining motivations, ours and others. Now, with Mercury moving direct, greater clarity around these matters begins to surface, especially with this falling in your first house during the first part of the month, Scorpio. Answers are coming into focus around some process that you've been working with. You may even find that you're ready to talk with someone else about a story you've been working with privately for a while. You feel closer to understanding the truth. You have a clearer sense of what's going on and how you think and feel about it as the month unfolds. There's an understanding of why that's building now. There's something deep and psychological about this Mercury retrograde and now direct process through Scorpio and Sag. It might be helping you to understand someone else's motivation for doing something, or maybe even your own. The emotional undercurrents that drive us might be revealed around this time. You might kind of be understanding why certain choices were made or what was really behind someone's words. Again, you could even be understanding yourself in a new way, Scorpio. There could be a sense of closure or empowerment here. The insights you're having aren't just coming in sharp and clear now, they're a little bit transformative. And this Mercury direct process in December is sort of bridging two landscapes. Together, these two signs and houses are telling a story in your chart. Take a look at these themes related to the first and second houses. Where have you been working something out with this? Where did you need to review, revise, reimagine your approach? What new clarity and perspective has come in now as a result of all your hard work, your digging, your optimism? You could be stepping into a new narrative now in some way, Scorpio, around a story that began in November. After weeks of rethinking, revising, and rereading between the lines, Mercury direct marks the beginning of a new story now. The confusion has lifted, the destination and the plot are clear. Now you notice how what you've learned has helped you feel more clear, decisive, certain. You've been sort of refined by the experience of Mercury retrograde through these parts of your chart, and you're ready to begin a new story, a new chapter in your adventure because of all you've learned and done. And I think this is a little extra true because of this beautiful grand water trine that's coming into focus here. This grand water trine involves Mercury here in your first house and Jupiter in your ninth. The ninth house is about your ideas, your beliefs, your philosophy, the way you see the world. Themes around education can show up here too. And then Saturn in Pisces completes the trine. Pisces rules your fifth house, Scorpio. The fifth house is about your creativity, your fun and leisure, the way you like to enjoy yourself. And children can show up here too. The fifth house is sort of a very joyful house. Early in December, we came to the end of the grand water trine story that began in late October. At least for now, this grand water trine involving Jupiter and Saturn wraps up with this final pass of Mercury. Now direct through the configuration. This marks a time, a story, a learning that's been about intelligence, intuition, and maybe building emotional wisdom. This is Mercury's third pass through this configuration. And I love the way that it's wrapping up this story that we began in late October, probably an emotional story in some way, especially with it falling in these houses. For you, Scorpio, there's been quite an abundance of emotional strength and ability lately. And I think that the power of this grand water trine and this emotional strength and ability has really been fueling the process that you've gone through with that Mercury retrograde and beyond, really. This grand water trine is a lot bigger than that Mercury retrograde. The perfection of this final grand trine iteration marks a peak in this process where you've likely felt emotionally strong and able. Might be a good time to think about how your emotional ability has helped you lately. What have you been able to let go of because you were viewing it with fresh eyes or maybe from a more healed perspective? How has that emotional ability and strength been serving you, Scorpio? It's one of the greatest features of this trine. Reflect on how that process has helped you function with more emotional maturity and ability lately. And maybe how is that work starting to sort of come to a head now in some way? I should mention that this trine configuration is active from about the 1st through the 9th of December. And I will also include date information in the timestamps. Just like that Mercury retrograde process was coming to an end, this grand water trine process is too in December. So themes around closure and completion could really be present in your experience in some way now, Scorpio. Since this is Mercury's final pass through this configuration, it could come with a sense of emotional closure or completion. It could be that something that's been repeating, a conversation, a theme, a realization, reaches its resolution in some way now. This process has sort of been working in waves, which is appropriate for grand water trine, coming in and then giving us a chance to process and then coming in again. And now with this final pass, there may be a sense, an emotional sense, that this process is culminating and that you're left wiser and maybe a little warmer as a result of all you've worked with. There could be some healing words now, too. I love that it's Mercury direct that's moving through this configuration at the end of the season of this grand water trine configuration. Words have power when Mercury is in Scorpio. And with this water trine in play too, this is a time where words might even heal or transform something big. Saturn in Pisces is grounding the energy and the potential, and Jupiter in Cancer is generous emotionally. So I feel like conversations that happen under this influence have the potential to heal patterns, even old ones, repair trust, or just deepen connection somehow. This is a time when people are speaking from the heart with maturity, empathy, and often with healing intentions too. The first half of December is definitely really interesting astrologically, but the second half is too. Let's talk now about the Sagittarius new moon that occurs on December 19th. This new moon is falling in your second house, which relates to earnings and values, Scorpio. You can see here that we have the sun and then Venus sort of in between the sun and the moon, and then Mercury. By this time, by December 19th, Mercury has moved into Sag. And when the moon catches up with the sun at those final degrees of Sagittarius, we'll have the new moon. This is a time of genuine optimism. You're not just trying to convince yourself that things are going to be okay when it comes to earnings and values, Scorpio. You're actually sincerely optimistic about the potential and about the future. And this might be something that's true for you generally. We tend to feel kind of good, be generally optimistic in the Sagittarius part of our chart. And the new moon here is sort of coming along to ignite that signature. This is also a time of planting seeds, a time for planting seeds, I should say. This new moon offers an opportunity to set intentions and plant seeds in this sector of the chart. And since you're likely feeling positive, hopeful, emotionally strong, optimistic about those themes, this is a great time to engage in seed planting processes. Dream big. And also, don't forget to be a little realistic about the time, the energy, the resources that you'll have available to pursue the objectives that you're imagining for yourself in the weeks and months ahead. Sometimes the optimism of a strong Sagittarius signature can cause us to bite off a little more than we can chew, which is kind of a weird expression. But yeah, you might want to sort of temper that optimism, that eagerness just a little along the way, Scorpio, at this time. I could also see themes related to encouragement showing up here. You could encounter someone who believes in you very much right now. They have faith that you can do it, and they aren't shy about telling you so. This is a really nice new moon. You're probably feeling quite good around this time, Scorpio. And I guess it could be that you're providing the encouragement now, sharing that optimism with someone who needs your encouragement. There's also something with Sagittarius about seeing the big picture. Sagittarius signatures signify that we're widening our perspective, that our view on something is expanding. And all the deep emotional work of the past several weeks with that grand water trine and Mercury direct, this lunation kind of lifts the energy. You might feel hopeful, enthusiastic, energized now. This new moon signifies a time where you can see further down the road and more of the highest potentials than you usually can. It's like you have a new perspective on the horizon, on the possibilities now. Not only that, but this new moon, right after this new moon occurs, the sun moves into Capricorn and we have the solstice. And also, sort of right in between those events, the sun and the moon too come into a square with Neptune. I'm just sort of noticing the way in which this transition to the solstice is so powerful. We're really just looking at a few days here, like the 19th through the 21st of December. And I'm thinking about this series, the new moon at the end of the sign, a square to Neptune, and then the sun moving into Capricorn for a solstice moment. So, okay, we're still talking about earnings and values here. And I want to put these other parts of the chart on as well that are being activated. So that sun and moon will come into a square with Neptune at the 29th degree of Pisces, right after the new moon. This is exact, but it's also a part of the new moon signature. And that fifth house relates to creativity, fun and leisure, and children. And then also, I think we want to put the third house on the chart because this is the Capricorn ruled sector. And this is where we'll have that winter solstice. So the third house is sort of about the way you move around your immediate area, the way you solve problems. Self-esteem can be related to the third house. So the third house is really about communication, your local area, siblings, and extended family members. But yeah, it connects to sort of the way you navigate your immediate environment, your neighborhood, your town or city. So lots of interesting themes in the mix here. Overall, I feel like there's a process of sort of optimism and ambition unfolding right now. All of this Sagittarius energy is so optimistic, especially with the Neptune square encouraging some dreaminess and idealism. And then the sun lands in Capricorn for the solstice, moving us from optimism to ambition. Capricorn is steady and calm and hardworking. It's ready to anchor the energy in so that it can be sustained through the long winter ahead. This could be a time where you feel like you're sort of selecting, sort of choosing goals or dreams. That Sagittarius signature is so optimistic, and then Capricorn kind of reins it in. There's something about this process that suggests a whole lot of dreams and ambitions coming in all at once around the time of the new moon and the Neptune square. And then things being kind of parsed out, trimmed back, pared down as we move into Capricorn season. It's like you're kind of going, okay, now that I've come back to my senses, what can I really do with all of those dreams? Which ones should I set aside and which should I actually work on pursuing? What's realistic and what's going a little too far? This is also just a time of renewal. This is the winter solstice. We're at a moment of a returning of the light. From the darkest night of the year, we pull up and out and back into a season where the sun's light is growing slowly and steadily, day after day. So, this solstice, especially in conjunction with such an interesting new moon, is a great time to reflect on the past season and the dreams you want to carry forward. It's also just a great time to rest and renew your spirit for all the bright future that lies ahead, Scorpio. Next, let's talk about the Cancer full moon that comes in on January 3rd. We're focused on your ninth house here, which relates to your ideas, your beliefs, your philosophy, and themes around education can show up here too. And then across the way, the light of this full moon is coming from the Capricorn part of the chart, from the sun. When the sun is in opposition to the moon, we have the full moon. And the sun is here with Venus and Mars at this time. This axis being activated is important, and Jupiter is a part of this equation too. The third house is about your communication, your local area, siblings and extended family members can show up here too. But I think that themes around the ninth house are the most likely to show up with this transit. Sort of an internal process of understanding how you think about the world now, what you think about the world now, what you believe. And you could be processing some big feelings around this time, Scorpio, in connection with all of that. Cancer is the first water sign. All water sign energy is about emotion, intuition, compassion, things like that. But since Cancer is the first water sign, it tends to bring sort of a youthful vibe to emotions. Emotional or protective energy can be a little over the top at this time. But the feelings might not be as major as they feel, as they seem. In fact, you might notice how quickly your moods are changing around this time, and you might notice that others are doing that too. It's sort of an emotional processing, but things aren't sort of as big as they appear. As is often the case with full moons, there's also sort of a culmination theme here. And I think that that's a little extra true because we're talking about the end of year, beginning of the year time frame. Of course, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day doesn't mean anything astrologically, astronomically, but we observe it so much in society as people in our human experience that I think that the time does carry a lot of weight. And the solstice does too, of course. There is an astrological significance to the solstice. But there's something about this full moon on the 3rd, especially with the aspects that's making to the sun with Venus and Mars there. There's something about all of it that I think sort of extends that New Year's Eve, New Year's Day energy. We may find we're doing some of that reflection work a little longer this year for a few extra days we have for that process. Full moons are times of manifesting rewards and culmination points. What did you set in motion in this part of the chart 6 months ago? How have things come together as a result of those intentions and your efforts since, Scorpio? And you might ask yourself, how should you adjust your plans now in terms of these life areas in the 6 months ahead? This is also a great time for noting progress. The last 6 months, the last year really has been dynamic for this Cancer part of the chart. Mars was retrograde here last winter and just here for months, right before Jupiter, which is exalted in Cancer, moved in. This is Jupiter's favorite place to be. So, how has this part of your life expanded and improved lately? Was there some delay first? Jupiter is still working through this house and sign, so the good growth isn't behind us just yet. Jupiter will be here until the summer of 26. But even though we're not wrapped up just yet, it's likely you can put your finger on some tangible, solid progress when it comes to your ideas, your beliefs, your philosophy at this point in the cycle. About a week later, Jupiter comes into opposition with some of those Capricorn planets. So we're still working with the same axis here, the ninth and the third. And there's something about this axis that's kind of just about like learning about the world, exploring the world. As a matter of fact, travel themes can definitely be a part of this. And I think there's just a general busyness suggested here as well. So we have Jupiter here in the ninth, opposing the Sun, Mars, and Venus in the third. This configuration is active from January 5th through 13th, but I do think that there's a peak around the ninth and the 10th. That's when these oppositions perfect. And at that same time, a cardinal grand cross forms with the moon and Chiron in Aries and Libra. So I think there's a peak around the ninth or the 10th, but really this is sort of a 5th through 13th, sort of early mid-January story. I think you're working hard during this time on finding balance, Scorpio. You might be really busy right now. But as much as you might feel pulled in more than one direction at this time, what this transit is really calling for is balance. You don't have to choose between going two different ways or pursuing two different goals. You kind of just have to keep going. And recognizing when you're sort of leaning too far one or the way or the other can help you stay back on the path. So sort of make adjustments as needed in terms of the way you're spending your time to just keep finding the balance that you need to keep everything going around this time, around this busy time. There's a lot of hustle here, but there's a lot of heart too. There could be some way in which those themes are sort of conflicting now. Oppositions sometimes signal two people or two parts of yourself sort of squaring off against each other, facing off against each other, I should say. In this case, we have Jupiter in Cancer, which craves comfort and closeness, emotional security and belonging, facing off against those Capricorn planets, which are calling for responsibility and structure and progress. You could see this playing out between yourself and someone else with each of you playing one of the roles, or it could be that this represents parts of yourself, like two inner voices that sort of conflict and encourage you in different directions around this time. How can you do both? How can you make everyone happy? How can you listen to and honor both sides of yourself that really just want to be heard here? There's a lot of drive here, but there's a lot of compassion too. All this Capricorn energy is very driven, very much ready to work hard and climb whatever ladder, staircase, or mountain that needs climbing. But this Jupiter in Cancer energy is making sure we don't step on or over anyone else along the way. Compassion, concern, and care for others aren't really holding back the ambition of the Capricorn energy here, but it might kind of feel like they are a little bit along the way sometimes. At the end of the day, I think this is a very busy time where you're trying to balance multiple priorities, and it may feel like there are conflicting priorities somehow. But I do think that the answer is somehow to honor it all and do both, trying to find that solution and just kind of trying to keep everything in balance could sort of be a part of your story around this time, Scorpio. On January 16th, we have a new moon in Capricorn. This Capricorn new moon is falling in your third house, related to all those third house themes we've been talking about. You've got a lot of work going on this month when it comes to communication, your local area, and perhaps siblings and extended family, just in time for the holidays. We're actually on the other side of that here into late January. So this Capricorn new moon is falling in that third house, but it's making some beautiful connections as well to other parts of the chart. Obviously, first of all, Mercury and Mars are involved with the sun and the moon at the time of the new moon. And then when the moon catches up with the sun at the later degrees, we have the new moon, and that will form a sextile over to Neptune and Saturn, both direct now at those final degrees of Pisces. The fifth house is all about your creativity, your fun and leisure, the way you like to enjoy yourself, and children can show up here too. And then these planets, these late degree of Capricorn planets, the sun and moon, are also forming a trine to Uranus in your seventh house. And that connects by sextile too. And we're forming this beautiful triangle pattern. The seventh house is all about your closest one-to-one relationships. So this is sort of a very relational new moon for you. As much as new moons are a time of going inward, there is something sort of very interpersonal here. Having fun, connecting with your closest people, maybe children, themes around communication. With all this Capricorn energy burning bright, this time is about building and planning the future, Scorpio. Capricorn new moons always help us keep our focus on goals and ambitions for the future. And Capricorn new moon energy helps us to ground those plans through our efforts and our intentionality. With Uranus involved in the mix here, there's a chance to bring sort of an innovative spark to that process. What's being built in these parts of your chart that's genuinely new and exciting and innovative? Understanding the opportunity and the new goals that are opening up now can help you to lay the groundwork and get started, Scorpio. This is also a time where inspiration is sort of readily available. There's something about this new moon that's incredibly inspired. You might feel like your enthusiasm for the themes of these houses is reignited around this time. You could just feel really inspired about relationships, about having fun, about connecting. There's something practical about it, sure. I mean, we're talking about Capricorn here, but there's something progressive going on here too. Notice what's lighting you up around this time and let inspiration carry you mentally and emotionally too. This process could be leading you somewhere pretty great. I think that this is also a time where we have the opportunity for working with success, with our definition of success. We could be redefining success now, especially in these parts of the chart connected to this new moon. This new moon is so dynamic. There are so many planetary influences at this time to consider. And all this Pisces energy is sort of loosening up old lines and boundaries. And then Uranus's influence is helping to loose up these outdated goals, any ties around outdated goals or ambitions. It's a time, this time, to define achievement and success on your own terms, not by how society or someone else taught you to define them. This new moon is a time where you could find a more personal path. Aquarius season is one for the book, Scorpio. I'll be talking about that in my podcast that I host on YouTube live twice per week. If you enjoyed this video, you would probably enjoy that too. And I will also be covering that eclipse season, that Aquarius season in the February reports. So be sure to check that out, Scorpio, when the time comes. And just thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful December 2025 and January 2026.